My professor back in grad school used to say, if women were to stop supporting the patriarchy, it would crumble in a day. Just like every structure of systemic oppression, the patriarchy is founded on various pillars which are needed to keep the structure intact. We have been told that if men, and only men, an essential pillar in supporting the patriarchy were to alter their behavior, the patriarchy would collapse. Even though men need to be held accountable for their behaviors, I want to shift the narrative today from waiting for men to dismantle the patriarchy to what we as women can do to crumble it. Through socialization, young girls are taught to follow patriarchal rules and enforce them as they grow up. This is a never-ending cycle, which has made women one of the main pillars in supporting the patriarchy. If we as women stop supporting this system that stands upon our shoulders, we can begin to bring down the patriarchy from the bottom up. For 2 decades growing up in India, I was a full believer of the patriarchy that taught me to place others before myself and fall in line. In my all-girls school, classes on chastity and moral science were emphasized, whereas there wasn't any form of moral policing when it came to boys, because boys will be boys. When I went to law school, I knew that if I wanted to be married and have children by the age of 25, I might have to put my career on the side. It wasn't until I left my culture and stayed away from its pressures that I realized that if I wanted to be the woman that I always wanted to become, I had to defy the system that had held me down for years altogether. Now at 27, I'm an international lawyer where I advocate for women through my work in the field of gender-based violence asylum and help them unlearn the very rules of patriarchy that I was taught growing up. But what are the rules of the patriarchy? In South Asia, women are given the choice to either be a good girl or a bad one. A good girl is someone who follows the rules to a T, and a bad girl is someone who chooses to express herself however she pleases. Upon reflecting on my time in India, I have boiled down the patriarchy's guidelines to girls into 3 simple rules. Rule 1, don't be a bad girl. Rule 2, don't associate with bad girls. And Rule 3, make sure that bad girls know that they're bad girls. In a sense, these 3 rules and the willingness to follow these rules make up an entire pillar supporting systemic patriarchy in South Asia. The pressure to judge other women and ourselves is what the patriarchy relies upon in order to stay standing. And this begs the question, how are these rules upheld? In early childhood, these rules are instilled in girls through methods of reward and punishment by parents, relatives, or teachers. This can look anything from you will get the doll or the tea set that you want only when you behave like a good girl, to using a wide range of emotional and physical abuse like pinching, slapping, or calling names in order to discourage unwanted behaviors. South Asian girls are instilled with fear to conform to these patriarchal demands by accepting gender roles in order to escape, survive, or just get ahead in their life. The decision to comply or oppose these rules is called the patriarchal bargain. The choice offered to South Asian women is simple. Either accept the patriarchal bargain and be a good girl, or defy the patriarchal bargain and be ostracized by the entire society and be considered as a bad girl. Another way South Asian culture trains women to act like good girls is by placing the reputation of a family on them. If you deviate from the prescribed expectations placed on women of your age, the family name is brought down. Women who are raped come home to ashamed families. Women who are unable to make their marriage work are looked down upon. The same benchmark is not placed on men. Oftentimes, this shame is met with rumors and gossip which spread throughout the community. And once that starts, other women are quick to distance themselves from the perceived bad girl. This is how the second rule operates, where other women are quick to distance themselves from the woman in question. This is one of the primary ways in which women uphold the patriarchy. I experienced a crippling impact of this when I was 14 years old and was caught having a boyfriend. Even though I was teased and talked about for my actions by boys, the feedback that hurt the most came from the females in my life. The women I had called my best friends just days before failed to stand up for me. I was bullied, I was ostracized, and I was called a slut by my peers. And for my teachers, I was a troublemaker. All of this led me to believe that at my core, I was a terrible person for enacting this singular behavior. Here, the third rule of patriarchy was enacted, as I was clearly made aware by others that I was being a bad girl for my actions. After this scarring incident, I fell back in line. In hindsight, even if some women would have supported me, other women would have judged them simply because of their affiliation to me. What this cycle of judgment proves is that the patriarchy is actually made to pit women against each other. It discourages allyship and it encourages women to push down others, especially the ones who do not conform to the strict mold that we're all given to follow. What is more interesting is that we are taught these methods of self-restriction, self-judgment, and peer punishment by our mothers. In my field, where I deal with gender-based violence asylum claims, I've asked women fleeing their countries because they were persecuted on the basis of their gender as to who convinced them when they went back the first time after they left their abuser. More often than not, my women clients have told me that it was either their mother or mother-in-law that had a conversation with them, explaining to them that some adjustment was required in every marriage and that some form of abuse is a part of the ebb and flow of every marriage. When I was caught having a boyfriend, it was my mother that punished me. Why would our mothers, people who love us the most in the world, actually make sure that we learn the rules of a system that oppresses our free will? For generations altogether, the idea that you can only be a good mother if you uphold the patriarchal bargain and teach the rules of the patriarchy to your daughters has been perpetuated. South Asian mothers derive validation, praise, and status in the community, and also from the men of their family if they're able to keep their daughters in line. Nothing can top raising a quiet, sober, decent, and a self-sacrificing daughter. Enforcement of the patriarchy goes beyond the domestic front and can also be seen in the professional field. Women face a lack of resources and opportunity, and because of this, they are forced to compete against each other rather than collaborate. When a woman comes to you to seek professional guidance, do you think, I had it rough, and so she should as well? Or do you think that I had it rough, and I want to make sure that I help her in the best way possible? One mindset will continue to divide us, and the other will foster our empowerment. We need an empowering mindset because for a woman to be successful in her career, she must have taken a detour from the good girl path. She must have confronted questions like, who takes care of the kids when you're at work? And must have been made to feel guilty for choosing herself. Now, I'm not saying that the patriarchy will be crumbled in a day. However, living in a patriarchal system all throughout my life, I have been able to see that the very rules that sustain the system are actually its weakest link. The first rule, which expects us to not be bad girls, can be addressed by shunning the good girl versus bad girl narrative. We should try and stop looking at our actions through the lens of what will people say and look at our actions through the lens of what's best for us. This metric negates the good girl versus bad girl narrative and actually lets women choose unapologetically for themselves. We also need to pause and acknowledge that attaching our value to our reputation is not only flawed, but is also toxic. We need to remember that the first step towards collective healing is actually fostering our own growth and personal healing. Only if we stop judging ourselves can we stop judging others. The second rule expects us to not associate with bad girls. To foster female friendships, we need to create a judgment-free zone not just for ourselves, but also for others. We need to invest in female friendships, especially because as brown girls, we're only trained to invest in either marital or familial relationships. The stronger your female friendships are, the more support you'll have when you finally choose to defy the patriarchal expectations from you. Apart from that, be generous in reassuring your fellow women, in telling them that they're doing the right thing by prioritizing themselves. Personally, for me, the only reason I could pursue my master's program in the United States was because my mother reassured my dreams, and I can't thank her enough. The final rule emphasizes on women morally policing each other through judgments, gossip, and peer punishment. Stop bonding with each other through perpetuating the judgment cycle. Consciously choose to not participate in gossip that tears other women down only because they're behaving like bad girls. We're at a position where the baton would soon be passed from our mothers to us. And if we want to raise a generation of young women that support each other, we need to make sure that we stop using judgments as a way of controlling women's behaviors. We are the link that allows these behaviors to be ingrained in future generations. Turning against each other will not protect anyone from the patriarchy. We don't have to wait for the future to be female. If we as women recognize our own role in upholding the system, we recognize the power we have over it. We can break away from the rules forced upon us, not just in South Asia, but across all systems of patriarchy. And we can begin to slowly crumble one of the most fundamental pillars upholding the patriarchy and change the power it has over us. This change starts from you and me, and it can start now. Thank you.